come right back to here, was when I was little, we would go places. He loved his motorcycle, and so he would say, "Hey, let's go for a ride," and we'd take off and just go wherever. And we would stop somewhere, park benches, and he'd go and sit on the table and put his feet on the bench, he's sitting up on the table, and he would just watch the world. He would just
Mhm.
sit there, light a cigarette, get out coffee, have his thermostat with some coffee, and drink his coffee, smoke a cigarette, and he would just watch people. And I
Mhm.
went and sat down next to him, and I would start talking to him, and he says, "Shh, shh, shh, quiet." He says, "Just watch these people out here." He says, "Don't say anything, but just watch them." He says, "When people don't think other people are watching them, that's when they're truly themselves. And you can learn a lot about people from doing that." And what he was trying to teach me at the time, I was
Yeah.
unaware of it, was the calm to witness the world instead of thinking about it. He
Mhm.
was doing that, and instead of telling me why he was doing that and what he was trying to have me accomplish, he was letting me experience it for myself and
Mhm.
hoping that I would. And at first, I didn't get it. I was just kind of sitting there watching people, and then pretty soon, as you're watching people, then I started thinking again. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be thinking about what they're doing, because he said just pay attention and don't start making up stories in your head about them. Just let them tell you the story. So he was trying to tell me, be calm, be quiet, and shut up in your mind and just experience this moment.
I've
But
done that so many. Mhm.
as I got older, and he was already gone, I actually started crying, and I said, "Wow, he knew this when I was a little boy, and he was trying to teach it to me, and here it's taking me another 10 years before I understood what he said." And I remember several times in my life when my father would say to me something, and then he would say, "You're not going to understand this now, but later on in your life, you're going to understand why I'm telling you this." He was
Mhm.
planting these seeds in my head of all of the stuff that is manifested in my life ahead of time.
Mhm.
And now I find myself kind of doing the same thing. And I wanted to get your take on that because that's kind of what we're doing when we're helping people, right? We're giving them
Mhm.
tools that they may not necessarily be able to use right now. We're hoping that we
Mhm.
can give them that and they're ready. But if they're not, we're also planting those seeds for later,
Exactly.
teaching them how to fish, like Jacob said,
Exactly.
right?
I love that saying about the fish. I even
Yeah.
put that on a picture with my son and my grandson fishing. I love that. It's one of my favorite, and that's exactly I've used that term in explaining this. Gift as well.
Yeah.
And I just want people to realize that they can heal themselves. God give us that ability. He give us the universe that we can manifest anything from the universe we want. We can. and I'm not going to be scared because that's just who I am. I'm not,
Right.
you know, because fear does nothing. I can remember being young, knowing things, seeing things, and it did sometimes frighten me. And I learned it didn't do me a bit of good. And I learned to overcome. I always just tried to face whatever fears I had, and just that's part of my adventure. And I do encourage others to do the same thing. I encourage everyone to do that. And the thing is too is that when you get within your inner self and you get that quiet, like you're talking about with your dad, that is so right. I even use that you do your breathing, you get quiet, you're like above your body, sort of hovering. You got this bubble all around you, just beautiful love and light. Your feet are planted so you can't float away, so you're
Right.
grounded
You
there.
can't float away, right? Yeah.
That's right. You're grounded there. Now you get within yourself. Now whatever it is that needs to be fixed, that's what you need to work on. And that's what I try to help people do, is to help themselves like that. I have to do it to myself. And
Oh
I
yeah.
do admit
Yeah.
sometimes when I get to the meditative state, I even told Jennifer, I was like, yeah. And I fall asleep a lot of times. And so I know why my poor legs is hurting, because I didn't make it that far down.
Right. The monks, when they were going through that, they still do that to this day. One of the things they teach the monks, even in Tibet, when you're getting into these long meditative states, they tell you drink tea beforehand so you won't fall asleep so readily.
Right,
Right.
right.
Get
Now,
some
I don't
tea and
fall
get some
asleep. Yeah,
caffeine in
that's
you.
right.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
When I do it for other people, I don't fall asleep, but when I do for myself, sometimes I do.
Well,
Mhm,
that's what happens because you get so comfortable. You get in that place, and that's the same euphoric feeling that you have when the endorphins
mhm,
kick in just before you fall into sleep and your mind drifts into the subconscious. It's that same feeling, that warm,
mhm,
fuzzy, cozy feeling of peace.
mhm.
And no,
Yes.
nothing hurts. The sound doesn't bother you anymore. Who cares what's going on? You're in that place. It's like being in mom's womb again,
Mhm.
right?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's the place we're trying to achieve to continue to return to. If you can hold that place in your conscious life and keep
Yes.
yourself in that place in everyday
Yes.
life all the time,
Mhm,
that's the key. That's someone asked Eckhart Tolle, how what is the signs that I'm waking up? And
mhm.
everything that Robbie just explained to you and talked to you about, and then myself about the being in that witnessing place, which is outside of your body, just slightly above. And if you pay attention to your thoughts, once you start to listen to your thoughts and get to the place where just prior to your mind thinking it, there's this whole entire concept of what I'm about to say that is already
Mhm.
there, and then the mind repeats it, and then the mouth repeats it a third time. When you can discern that, that's when you know that you're waking up, because you're going above and outside of the thinking mind and realizing that your thinking as a soul is a whole conceptual idea. And then your mind breaks that down into words and explains it out your mouth. When you
Yes.
hear that before you hear the mind thinking, you're hearing your thought as a soul that is
Mhm.
not attached in any way to this body, and that's what controls this avatar. So the
Right.
entire concept is in your head before it's in your mind. And when you realize that and you start to be able to reach that and access that, that's when you're starting to wake up. And so that's what I meant. If you can keep yourself as much of the day long in that
Yes.
place, that's you being awake in the now.
Yes.
And it's always pulling you down. That's what Robbie said. I have to do it to myself. I do too. We all do, because this world is
Mhm,
a matrix. There's
mhm.
many egos that are pulling us, our ego, and pulling us down to keep us in this place. So we have to force ourselves here. In the book of Thomas, like you said, God said there in that, I believe it was Thomas.
Yes.
It could have been the Book of Truth, but I think it was in both. That I have already come to you.
Mhm.
I am not coming to you anymore. You have to now come to me, because I have come to you and give you the tools. I gave you the tools in your past to your soul to now come to me. See them,
Mhm.
find them, and then come to me. So it is our duty to meet God halfway now. God has come
Mhm.
all the way down here and said, here's the tools you will need. Find these, see them. And when you do, I'll see you there.
They're already in here.
And they're already in here, right? It's
Mhm.
already within you, your
Mhm.
body. Everything is there for you
Mhm.
to become and achieve this place, to no longer
That's
be
right.
caught and stuck here, that you could leave whenever you want. But what happens is, and I'll tell you this right now, and Robbie will say the same thing. The second you get into that portion of your mind and you say, I can actually leave right now and not have to be stuck here,
Mhm.
a nanosecond later, you go, yes, but I have to help the rest.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? Am I right?
Mhm. It
Yeah.
is right. It is right. I always know I have more work to do.
Yeah. Because we do always have more work to do. Let's be serious. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, the truth is, it doesn't matter where I came from to be in this place. Say I was born
Mhm.
here and this is my very first time, or that I came with the people that were in the 11th density and came down, which they called the fallen angels and tried to pervert into the devil. Or if I'm a wanderer that came in, or a walk in that came in, and I came from whatever level, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Mhm.
I still have work to do no matter where I am.
Yeah, they did try to say that about the RH negative blood. I know for sure they said that.
Yeah.
That we, yeah, whatever.
I'm RH negative. My whole family is. Where I'm O
Yeah,
negative, as a matter of
me
fact. So
too.
I'm the rarest. But you have the negative. We talked about that, right?
I have AB negative.
Yeah, but you still have the negative, right? So
Yes.
that's the reinforcement of the genetic royalty in this genetically royal body,
Mhm.
right? So the people that have the negative, whatever it is, that they don't have the positive, they have the negative, which everybody thinks is negative means bad. It doesn't. Negative means the good, right? So
Mhm.
that's one of the markers that says that the soul that's within you, it already has the power of creation. So that means whoever you are in your walk of life, that you are already able to achieve that. You just don't remember it. And then
Mhm.
some of you don't have that. You have the other blood DNA, and that doesn't mean that you can't achieve that. That just means
Yeah.
that you're some of the people who got stuck here, and the rest of us,
Mhm.
that little 10% of the population or the 20% of the population that has those negatives, right? No, it's actually 40, because 10% is the O's, negative and positive, or O and then O negative. So that's 10%, and then everybody who has negative, because everything A has negative, B has negative, AB negative, right? They all have a negative. So it's not
Mhm.
half, but it's less than half. So the scary thing is that, according to what everything everyone has been telling me, is that negative is a wanderer, a walk-in, a star seed, the people that came from the 11th, those people, which makes up about a third or more, almost a quarter of the population of this planet, came here to help.
Mhm.
So we weren't the ones that were stuck. We're the ones that are stuck with you now, helping you raise your vibration. And that's one of the markers that the governments look for in people's DNAs to find, and they know that you're a wanderer. They try to recruit you and turn you evil. That happened to me. They started recruiting me at 11 and stopped trying to recruit me. They're still trying to recruit me. And I'm 54. Okay. Okay. That's not a joke, right?
I
That is not a
understand.
joke. So they want to corrupt you, because
Mhm.
you have abilities, and that's the ones they grab as children and have that whole 20 and back thing happen to them, because they, before you wake up, they use your abilities and then put you back into place, and they use you for nefarious reasons, even though you don't know it, right? And then they put you
Mhm.
back into place. So let's get away from politics again, because that scares people, and I don't want to create more fear, right? So,
Mhm.
but I wanted to point that out, because you guys need to look at your own DNA, your own blood type, as well as other things that you don't realize, that are markers that are there, that are supposed to remind your body to wake up, to break the
Mhm.
conditioning, and that is the same with everyone. So
And
but
the
when go
Native
ahead.
Americans they're the keepers of the earth, though. The
Oh
Native
yeah, all the
Americans.
native people, the Aborigines in
Mhm.
Australia, the natives in Canada, the
Mhm.
natives in America, absolutely. The natives that are everywhere. If you look at Central America, South America, all of those peoples, their whole
Mhm.
ideology, their way of life is completely
Mhm.
spiritual compared to us. They
Yeah.
are 100% spiritual,
Mhm.
right? But they would say they're not because they don't believe they are. But compared to the regular Western world, which is mostly godless, at least they're trying to make it that way. Those people are the keepers of the earth, man.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And they know things that we're just now realizing. The Hopi rock legend, the Hopi people will tell you, the Anasazi, the Hopi, and the Apache that live in the Four Corners areas, and the who else am I missing? There's another two other big Native American tribes in the Four Corners. I used to
Choctaw.
live there.
I know about
Choctaw,
Choctaw.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. Well, then there's the Mohican, but then we're starting to go further
Cherokee,
east. Cherokee's in
Navajo,
the Midwest. Yeah, Cherokee's
mhm,
right there in that same area. That starts just at
Blackfoot.
like Texas,
Yeah.
Wyoming, right? Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So these tribes were still tuned in, and they tell you the stories of the different destructions of the planet. And the Aborigines in Australia can go back, I don't know how many. Some of the Aborigines say that they know 7 cycles, that we're on
Mhm.
the 7th cycle that they know of. And
Mhm.
our modern religion will only tell you about the deluge. Well, that was just the last one, the flood, right?
Mhm.
You can read the Kilburn Bible, which is over in Scotland. I was just telling Robbie about this yesterday,
Yes.
and the
Mhm.
Bible with the first 7 books are scrolls that came out of Egypt during at the Crusades, or I mean after that, at
Mhm.
the Exodus. At the Exodus, further back, when Moses got the people to leave, these scrolls came with them and ended up with a monk in Scotland, and they took their scrolls and put it on. The last 6 books are their ancient scrolls, which is the basic creation story that you hear from all around the planet. And that in there tells the same story, right? Of a second deluge. Well, I'm sorry, a second death of the earth, and that was the meteor strike that destroyed the earth, and that would
Mhm.
have been 75,000 years ago, or the one prior, which would have been 125 or 27,000 years ago, because there was 2. So that's the
Mhm.
third one. So there, but I was trying to figure out if that was the one that was that the meteor that struck the super volcano in that time, or like Krakatoa and one of the others that went off in that short time period, or if it was the Younger Dryas, and it was the Younger Dryas. That's how far back that goes. That's just one
I have
scroll.
to look it up
And the
again.
Aborigines know of 6 more, right? Isn't that
Mhm.
crazy?
That
So
is crazy.
they're the keepers of the planet. They're the keepers of the earth, because they
Mhm.
they have they have survived. Their knowledge of the earth survives maybe eons.
Mhm. Yes, I
That's
agree.
crazy. See, Norma said, Norma, she's a co-host with me on Skull Island, co-creator of Skull Island. She said I'm O negative as well. See,
Mhm. Mhm.
so, and I know
They
Peter
say
is too. I'm
that,
pretty sure Peter
they
is.
say
Peter's
that,
in the crowd.
they say RH negative, folks attract one another.
Yeah, I find that because my friends, my family,
Mhm.
and more people I ask, what's your bloodline? What's your DNA, their blood type, and they're like, O negative. I'm like, what do? Melissa Erdman, O negative. Aaron Fowler, O
Mhm.
positive. Right?
Mhm.
So I mean, look at these people that are in the crowd. You guys
Mhm.
are all have the markers. You have the markers of a wanderer or a walk-in, guys, or one of the
Mhm.
fallen, one of the from that came from the 11th density, who came down here, who are here still holding this place, holding it here. They're the line. They came down here to be the line, hold the line, while the rest of us wake up and toe the line. And they all have that same genetic marker. And here's the thing, guys: type O and type O negative DNA only arrived on this planet 10,000 years ago.
Hmm.
They cannot find it in history past 10,000 years ago. Think about
Wow.
that. Think about that. Scientists, mainstream scientists, believe that the people who have a DNA that is type O or type O negative are more genetic royalty than the genetic royalty that we already are. That's what I'm
Hmm.
told. And I know that we attract one another because that's just every person that I've met that has that marker. I instantly go, hey, right? So okay, so Peter says A positive O. Okay, so I think he's trying to say A or O positive. He usually talks into his phone. Sometimes his phone doesn't pick it up. So he could have went O positive, right? Because that's how he talks. He's Irish and he talks real slow, and so he might
Mhm.
have went O positive, and it took A O positive. So he's O positive. There you go. Right. So this right here is a core team of people. Isn't that crazy? So,
It is.
and I know these guys. I work with all these guys. Peter and I are in the coalition together. Aaron and I have collaborated 100 million times. We're friends. He's like my brother and his wife. And I'm working with Melissa. Right, he's one of these people with all the O's and the negatives out there, and we all know each other, and we all speak to each other on a daily basis. For crying out loud,
Wow.
right? We attract one another. Norma, we all attract one another. So there we are, communicating, collaborating, and we instinctively know. Aaron and I talked about this. We instinctively know that we can work together and set our egos aside for real. Not say that we're going to, and then in some way try to like kind of take control of something that doesn't belong to you. We're completely trusting each other, knowing that we're not going to rip each other off. And we have this, we've always had that rapport. The first day we met, his wife said, this was years ago, and I was interviewing him, and we were hanging out like you and I are hanging out now. And they said, he's so easy to talk to. He's like hanging out with my brother. And I thought the same thing. I was just like, what's up, Aaron? Like I knew him forever. Right.
Oh, I know. I have people like that too.
And that's just, and when you meet them, that you're going to be able to hang out with them for as long as you're in their life or they're in your life. And who knows what happens with life? They might be lifelong friends now. You don't know, right? You can't tell the future unless you're in that place. Right. So what was Julie saying? I'm going to put this up on the screen. My husband has 2 sets of dog tags from his Army's days and says O positive, and the other one says O negative. Oh, then he says, right, it's O negative with a wink. I'm O positive. That's good. How's O negative? I'm O positive. That's hilarious. Oh no, Peter's saying he is A positive. Okay. So Peter's saying he is A positive. Go ahead.
My oldest granddaughter, she is a lot Native American, and she looks a lot Native American. And when she was born, it was an automatic thing. She's also negative. She's B negative. And when she was born, she was laying over there in the little thing, and she heard my voice and automatically looked at me, and I automatically said, my, it's been a long time. It was just an automatic thing, and I knew,
right.
It was like, wow, it's been a long time. It was like deep within me, I knew. And so you do the same thing with people you meet as well.
Yeah. Well, I told you that story when I was at church. I went to church or maybe I didn't. I went to church and I was meet and greet, right? Everybody's outside before we're all running in. Everybody's, because the priest isn't in yet, and we're all going to talk outside and meet and greet. And then everybody goes inside, sits down, and gets ready. And a person that I knew, came up with another woman and said, hi, this is so and so. I looked at her and instantly I knew that I've known her for many, many lifetimes.
Yes, I've done that too.
But and I didn't say, hi, my name is so-and-so. How nice to meet you. I said, how are you? And she said, it's been a long time. That's why when you said that just now, that triggered the memory. She says, it's been a long time. I'm good. How are you? And I said, I'm fine. And then the girl said, you guys know each other? And I said, no, we haven't met in this lifetime. Not yet. Until now. And she was like, what do you mean in this lifetime? And she's like, because I've known him before this lifetime. And I'm like, I don't know how far back we go, but it's doing my eyes good to see you. And she said the same. And we never spoke again after that. She checked in. Hi, how you doing? How you doing? Meet and greet. And then we went and sat down for church. And then we talked a few minutes afterwards, and she went on her life and I went on my life. But I knew that I knew her, and I knew that I was going to see her again.
That's highly unusual in church. You don't usually get that in church.
Right. Well, now, mind you, we were outside of church on the steps.
Yeah, but still, right. You usually don't get that.
Right. Yeah. So we were outside of church on the steps. We hadn't gone in yet, but then, we never spoke again, but I knew that there was going to be a time that I'm going to see her again, whenever that is.
Yeah, that's right. It's amazing when that happens.
Yeah. Right. And this is Aaron's answer that he said, yes, sir. Collaboration is the key without trying to control it. Just allow every voice to speak and take turns leading. But see, that's where we realized that we could do that. Right. And work together and not try to be the one that has to be in charge or has to have the fame or whatever. We all know that that's not what we're here for. Right. And so Aaron's responding to what I was saying there. And because
absolutely.
Yeah, that's how we have a blast doing that show.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we're only on the 10th show, right? I think we're on 11 now or 12 this coming week on Wednesday, right? I mean, that's literally it. We just started it. I'm on episode 391 right now, talking to you guys, right? It's actually that's just the episodes that I have posted. So it's actually the real count of this episode is more like 560, but I only have 391 on my MP3 file. I don't
Oh,
have the archives because the archives are on YouTube, and I haven't gone and ripped them down from YouTube and on my computer, which I think I blew up, so I can't access it. So otherwise, those would be out there for you guys to hear. The first 3.5 years of the podcast would be out on the MP3 file for you guys to listen to. So if you guys that do listen to me on the MP3 file, if you want to hear the first 3.5 years of my broadcast, you'll have to go to YouTube and go back all the way to 2016 when I started to hear those, because they're not readily available on wherever it is you listen to me around the world. They're just not there because I've never put them
well,
up.
I certainly hope I did okay. I was a little nervous talking without, like, you, I guess, seeing you on there
That's
talking
why
to you.
that's why I stopped that. Like I
Yeah.
forgot to tell you I was going to do that, and then you were like, "Can you hear me?" I was like, "Okay." She has no idea why I just did that, so I popped back and left myself on because I went, "Okay, she's nervous," and I got that.
I had felt, my ego wasn't involved, but all of a sudden the ego was like, oh God, I'm going to sound dumb.
Right? Is he even here? That happens if people don't see you. I don't say anything. You don't know, right? So like,
Right.
am I on my own here? Right?
Mhm.
I was watching Alex Coolier, and he was doing a webinar, and it was like that. He was a full screen, and he was sitting there talking, and the guy got up and went into the kitchen to get something, right? And you don't know this as the listener until he stops talking, and then he goes, and he same thing. He's like, hello, can you hear me? He's like, is anybody there? And then you can hear the guy off in the distance, yeah, I'm here. And then he runs over to the microphone, you can tell, and he says,
Mhm.
sorry, I just jumped up for a second to go get something out of the fridge to get a drink. And he says, but
Right.
I'm still here. So right, so that happens. And I've been on many productions where we put people up on full screen, and we didn't tell them
Mhm.
ahead of time we're going to put you on full screen and leave you there while you're talking, and then they get confused at some point. They go, oh my god, am I like on air by myself? Right? Can anyone hear me? Am I just talking to myself? So when I saw you do that, I went, okay, leave your face on the screen for her, and she can, that way she knows you're there.
Babysitting.
Right?
You got to hold my hand.
Well, no, that's, I didn't discuss that with you ahead of time, and so
Mhm.
then I thought, I hope she's not mad that I did boom, put her on the screen like that, right? So that's why I was like, ooh, back up.
No, I'm easy to get along with. I don't get mad easy.
Well, when it comes to this, there's the personalities. That's why I said before, when there's a certain group of people that I don't work with because they're supposed to be awake and they have all this like ego, right?
Yes.
And
No,
they're
when I
like,
started
I'm
getting
completely
into
awake and I'm
groups,
teaching
yeah.
everybody everything, but then they get upset about somebody who's in the chat room, or they get upset about somebody
Mhm.
talking when they shouldn't be. Who's that person that keeps putting their hand up? You know what I mean? And I'm like, what?
Right.
Yeah, you're not as awake as you think you are, because that shouldn't bother you,
Right.
right?
I had a very rather awkward experience with that, because I'm been in different groups and try to do readings for people, and that's how I've met a lot of really people that I've helped or that have helped me in some way. And I would, offer free readings or whatever. And this one lady, though, she had her own group, sort of a basically, I guess, promoting her own business, and she just looked like really gifted. And so I said, she offered me a reading. I'm like, well, you know what, I can't, really afford to pay for one right now, but we could trade one. And she, was like, oh, you're gifted. I'm like, yes, we could do a trade. And
Right?
so she started, and said all these just really wonderful things about me. I was a little overwhelmed, like, what, really? Okay, that's okay. I don't have big ego up here. It's like, okay, okay, giving me all these compliments. And then I said, I feel a little overwhelmed giving you yours, because you just told me all this wonderful stuff about, myself, and it was almost just too much for me. I can give compliments, but don't take them too well. One of those kind of personalities.
Right?
And so, but I was like, okay, well, I'll give you your reading now. And so I started giving it to her, and I told her that she needed to be careful of her diet and have a little more exercise, because I could see that she might have a tendency to have like a diabetic, or that she also might have some artery problem. That she might just want to watch her diet. Don't try to manifest this. Pray against it, but just kind of watch your diet and to kind of stay on the right. She automatically got mad. Just, I mean, fighting mad. and just didn't even want to talk to me ever again. That was craziest thing. I was like, "Oh, I didn't mean to offend you. I'm so sorry if I offended you." She just wouldn't even accept an apology. But I was just seeing something that I thought I should tell her to be careful of with her diet and exercise. And I felt so horrible about that.
Right. Right. I mean, but sometimes the truth hurts, right?
Yeah, right. And another
Right.
thing, she liked this man and she wanted to stay with this man. I'm like, he's not your forever man. I'm like, I don't see him your forever man, but for now, you be happy with him or whatever. But I say you're going to have a child in the future, and this man's already, can't have any more. So you're going to have another child. I was trying to give her, a lot of hope. No, I like this man. And I'm like, wow, this lady is gifted and was able to tell me a lot of things, and
But
you
she
know,
was close-minded to that
right, right.
avenue, and that'll change as time goes. So Peter, I didn't realize this about. I've known Peter for he and I are in coalition together, but I don't remember how we became friends. We just were on Facebook.
Hmm.
He says the same thing. It was weird, but he was there from my very first show in the beginning. I didn't realize that, so he remembers it like it was yesterday. He was there, but when I went live, Orion Rising for the very first time, Peter was in my audience.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, and
And
Robbie
another
here,
thing too.
Robbie
Okay.
popped. She's prodding you. You don't have to do this, but I would like to. If you are willing to tell, you told me this story off camera. I'm hoping you're willing to tell the story to the people here. Robbie wants you to. She says, tell them the story about your dream. I call that more of a out of body experience. I think a past life
Mhm,
regression.
mhm.
But it's my opinion. You guys can judge for yourself if Robbie wants to tell
Okay.
that. When she was
Yes, of
talking to
course I could.
Pontius Pilate.
Mhm.
So if you want to
Okay.
tell the story, go ahead, and
Oh,
I'll
sure.
shut up and let you
Oh, yeah.
tell it.
Okay. Um, my last ex-husband, it's funny I say it like that, but it is what it is. So he did not believe in anything really, other than just the Bible, nothing spiritual, no psychic abilities, no visions, anything. So he had been off working and he come back and I was asleep and I was talking in my sleep, which is something I do quite a bit. I even walk in my sleep, do a lot of things in my sleep. And so, anyway, he started listening to me talking in my sleep and he started asking me questions. I feel like he was probably, seeing if I had been cheating or something because he'd been off working, which he should have known better. But my
Right, right.
point was is that he was, asking me questions to find out who I was really talking to. And so he said, "Who are you talking to?" And he said, I mean, he was shocked about this. He said, "You said you were talking to Pontius Pilate." And at this time, I mean, I hadn't watched anything about Pontius Pilate, really didn't know much about him, just
Right.
knew a couple of small things in the Bible of his part, when Jesus was
Yeah,
crucified.
and you didn't even know the backstory until after I
No.
told you, and then you went,
Mm-mm.
"Now it makes total sense. What was I
Right,
talking to
right.
him about?" So go ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then he was asking me, "Well, what are you doing? What are you talking to him about? What is he saying?" I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to reason with him. I'm trying to reason with him and change his mind or something, along that lines is what I was saying." And he was like, "And what?" And I said, "It's all prophecy. It can't be changed. It's all prophecy." And it kind of shocked me, but somehow whenever he repeated everything I had said in my sleep, I knew deep within my soul, I always had that I was there when Jesus died. Uh, and to me, a lot of people they want to portray themselves as a past life. I was Cleopatra, I was somebody, whatever. But there has
Right.
to be other people too in past lives. I mean, we all couldn't be just
Right. Nobody. We can't be
queen.
all kings and queens. There's a
That's
bunch of us
it.
that
Right,
were
right.
serfs and peasants. Right. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's
I can't
exactly right.
remember a past life. I haven't yet of a past life where I was any kind of royalty ever. Everything that I've dug up on my past lives have been just some mundane guy. I was a bank robber in the old west out here in the United States, and I got gunned down robbing a bank with a bunch of people. The citizens got tired of robbed, and so they all got together and they set us up in this one town. We went into the bank. When we came out, they shot us all up and almost killed all of us. I was the last one out of the bank. I didn't make it onto my horse.
Leonard, I must have known you then, okay? I must have known you then. I don't remember this past life, but listen, when I was a little girl, 6 years old, what I asked for Christmas was shiny cap, guns, and a holster. And I had my fringe. And anyway, always, and I wanted a toy train. I wanted a toy train and I wanted guns. And I always was drawn to that, except I used to wear like the Indian stuff too. And I'd always tell my mom, I would go back, I would live with them Indians if I was back then. I'd go live with them Indians. So the
Right.
movie, the movie Battle of Little Big Man, with Dustin Hoffman.
Yes, yes.
That resonates with me. Dances with Wolves, those resonate with my soul.
Right.
So I don't
Well, I
know all
was
the
native.
details.
I was native once here in
Mhm.
California, which is really bizarre. Um, I check this out. I was with my first ex-wife. Um, we were at her parents' house. She was living in her parents' house, and they had a jacuzzi out back. They had a deck you walked out on, then it went downstairs, and halfway down was a jacuzzi, and then it went downstairs down to the lawn and the area, in the backyard. And that area, it was over in Benicia, California, or as we say it, Benicia, because it was a landowner's name. It wasn't. Everyone says Benicia or Benicia. It's actually Benicia because it was Don Benicia owned that land
Mhm.
from the Mexicans. They were actually Spanish royalties before the white people took over California. So back before
Mhm.
that, the natives owned that place, and we were in the backyard with her son, my stepson, and at the time he was 17 or 18. And I walked over and I sat down in the area. It was a wooden lid that went over with, actually, it was a lid that went over with, had leather on it to cover the jacuzzi, but the whole area around it had seating. And then so you could sit up on the deck and then go into the jacuzzi and then get out of the jacuzzi and sit on the deck. So there was a barbecue at one point and all this stuff there. So I'm sitting there, and my wife is down the lawn and my son is up on the patio right above me. And I looked at her. She was walking up, and I said, welcome to what was once a kiva, which is now a jacuzzi. Right. And she says, thank you, may I enter? And I said, please do. And she says, it's a very nice jacuzzi, but the kiva would have been better. And I said, agreed. And I motioned for her to sit down. And when she sits down, all of a sudden, her son, my stepson, is standing up right at the edge of the walkway, and he says, what the fuck, pardon my language, are you guys saying? And I turned and I looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? Well, all this land used to be a Native American owned land, and this particular place in the grove of these trees in this valley was a meeting place for many Native Americans, and they used to come to this backyard where we are. And he says, how do you know this? And I said, I don't know. Why did you ask? He said, because until now you weren't speaking English,
Wow.
and neither was she. and,
I have
and
talked other languages in my dreams
and
too.
apparently
Other
we were
people heard me.
speaking in whatever that Native American language was to each other.
Mhm.
I heard
Mhm.
it as English, and so did she. He heard it as a foreign language and knew it was a Native American foreign language. And he said, until you just now answered me in English, I did not understand a word that you guys just said to each other in the last 3 minutes.
Mhm.
That's
That's
crazy, right?
I have talked in my sleep in other languages. People have heard me that I don't know.
I do that. They've told me I speak in Gaelic, and I don't know very much Gaelic in this life. But
Mhm.
apparently, when I'm asleep and I'm talking, most of the time it's in Gaelic. Everybody in my
Mhm.
family who understands Gaelic are like, "You're saying some stuff that we're not quite sure we understand the weight of it." And I'm like, "What is it? Does it sound like prophecy?" They're like, "Either that, or you're like talking to God."
Mhm.
Like, really?
Right.
But I
Mhm.
don't know that much Gaelic in real life. I have to ask Peter most of the time. What does this mean in modern Gaelic or ancient Gaelic? Because Peter's like the whiz. He knows all of that stuff, right? So he and I know some of it, but not as much as he does. I'm hoping to learn Gaelic so I can speak to him more in Gaelic and get us both back doing that. But that's
Yeah.
just crazy, right?
I had the dream about one time I told you this when I first met you about there was a spaceship come down and lights were just everywhere, just going around, and it was so big and so bright and thought it was like gonna, hit me or somehow. I'm talking about the lights above me, whatever, feeling like that, just like ducking, not knowing what's going to happen. And I remember the door opened on the ship, and and the lights were just so bright, so every which way, just so bright, and this thing was enormous. But inside, no one came out. This beautiful bright light was shining from within all the way out. It was just beautiful. God was in there, and He started. At the time, I think I was concerned with the husband I had, that I was afraid I was going to probably die, and I was worried and praying that I could maybe not die because I had a child to raise. And so God was talking to me and telling me I'm going to live a long time. He was talking to me telepathically. He didn't like open the door and come out. It was
Right.
telepathically. He spoke to me and told me, know that I was going to live a long, long life.
Hmm.
And that was pretty amazing.
That is, right? Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
there were things that my father taught me how to do, and my father he would literally be sitting in the room. He did this one time at my sister's house, and this is legit. My sister was freaking out. This was my I have four sisters, so she was the youngest, the second youngest of the four sisters, Jennifer. We're at her house. My dad and I went over. This was when I was a kid, so I was probably 15 or 16 at the time. And we're sitting there at her house, we're talking, and it's getting dark outside. It's twilight. It's starting to get dark. And we're all just talking, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden the kitchen light just goes tunk and comes on. Well, I'm sitting next to the light switch, and my dad is sitting over here. The light switch is behind me to the right. I didn't do it. My father did not reach over and do it. My sister is sitting across from him. He was sitting with his arms crossed or something, maybe with a cigarette. He didn't have his arms out. The light goes, boom. She looks up at the light. She goes back at him, and she says, "You did that, didn't you?" And he said, "It was getting dark." He smiled. It was getting dark. But
Mm-hmm.
he didn't reach over and turn the light switch on. He just did that. So he also would be sitting there, and we'd be watching TV, and he would say to like myself or one of my sisters, "Oh, wait, get up and go and answer the phone. It's your mom. She's at your grandmother's house." "What are you talking about?" And then the phone would ring. And then they'd go to answer it, and it was exactly who he said.
I did that too. And my kids have done that too when they were young. They would know who was outside before, and we weren't expecting someone, and they could tell me who was outside. So kids are all born pretty psychic too, but they're taught otherwise. The society teaches them otherwise to not, to listen to the inner self. It's
Right.
true.
Well, I've been told that a lot of us, but some people more so, I was told many times and by many different people that my energy arrives before I do.
Hmm.
My stepson would notice that whenever I was coming over, the dog, his dog, Stella Luna was her name, by the way.
Oh.
Beautiful, right? She was a American pit bull mix with a Dalmatian. Uh, so she had all the spots and everything, but she was an American pit. So she was all white with
Hmm.
the brown and black spots. And you could tell there's a Dalmatian in there, but that's all pit bull, right?
Hmm.
She was beautiful, great girl. She died, she had cancer, but she lived a long
Hmm.
life before that happened. So she would get up and run over to the window and stand up looking out the bay window and wagging her tail. And Christopher would see that and he'd go over and he'd go, "What's out there? What's out there?" And he's thinking that there's a cat or a dog. And every time she did that, she'd be looking up the hill, wagging her
Hmm.
tail and looking up the hill. And then I would pull up. So she knew either she would hear the sound of my car or she knew my energy. And another time when that happened, he was not in the room and she got up and ran over to the window and his mom was there and she said, "Oh, look, Luna's going for the window again." And he says, "That's because Leo is about to pull up."
Yeah, animals are psychic too,
Yep.
and they are. They
Yep.
much.
Leo's about to pull up. And so she told me when I came in, she said, "Your energy gets here about 35 seconds before you do every time." And I'm like, "Really? Is it that far out?" And she's like, "For the dog, it is."
And
Like
I'm not
clockwork.
sure.
If that dog jumps up and you're expected, and I go click with a stopwatch and go 3, 2, 1, I'll go vroom, down the hill and pull in front of the house every time, she said.
And I'm not sure how many people on here that are already awake with their gifts and experience things, but the spirit world will all of a sudden you will have spirit show up here and there, and you will recognize things, and you'll have experiences you never did before. Like I said, I've always had it. Wherever I go, there's spirit activity. Just for instance, I was telling Jennifer and them the other day, I found my biological dad. I didn't have a name or anything to go on, and I found it through the DNA, through finding his first cousin. But when I went to meet him, here I'm in my 50s, I'm like, are you my daddy kind of thing. That's kind of awkward in the first place. But, I just wanted answers, if we could have a relationship, that'd be great. But I just wanted answers and to know certain things. So when I went up to their house, and his wife was still alive then, because that's a couple of years ago. And when I walked in the house to sit down with the DNA test and everything to present, stuff just started falling off their shelves. just falling off the shelves.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, you have spirits. Okay. Well, I'm not sure if they're happy or upset that I'm here, but hey, I'm here.
Right. Right.
But
I mean
it was
that.
I
Yeah.
have this a lot. I have it a lot, and I don't know if everyone else does, but it's common, and you will start seeing things. And some people who've never seen ghosts or spirits, they will if they're around me. You know.
Yeah, and that happens, and people don't realize. If their third eye's closed, they're not going to see that stuff anyway, so they don't know. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm,
I walk into a place, and I can immediately. I walk in, I'm like, you guys realize there's a guy, and I did that at her parents' house. I said, you guys realize that there's a man from the First World War who's wearing
mhm.
his army uniform, who resides in the basement of this house.
Yeah,
And,
I just have you ever heard of Eureka Springs, Arkansas?
I don't think so, but go
Okay,
ahead.
it's one of the most haunted places, like listed among those. Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful place, and they do have a great passion play they have that is phenomenal. I saw that when I was about 14, but I went there a few years ago during the winter months. Um, hold on, I got a call. I'm declining it. And anyway, I went there. I wanted to go on the ghost tour. I wanted to see the different places or whatever. And it was so fun for me because while we were on the ghost tours, I'm like, okay, well, what about this person that was also here in this room that his body was also shown? It was a little boy. What about him? You are not talking about him. And all of a sudden they stop and look at me and they're like, yes, you're absolutely right.
Right.
And I'm them stuff and I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you the rest of the story. And they're like, and I even mentioned sometimes I'm a show off and I don't mean to be, but I'm like, but they're not talking about this. It needs to be told. They're wanting these spirits want to be sometimes just recognized.
Right.
That's what
All right,
I
I got to
think.
give
That
a
is want
shout
to be
out real quick.
recognized.
Omar's in the crowd. He said he was over on YouTube. I don't know why, brother. I don't know why I didn't see your remark. So I'm glad you hopped in over here. Omar has Watchers Talk is his podcast, and he puts on, that's his corporation, his company. He's putting on a bunch of webinars. He's putting on a really big webinar coming up for the solstice. My God, man, I didn't realize. He said he was going to do 111 speakers, and he did it. Now that thing's what, 10 days, bro? So I got to give him kudos. Omar is the guy who got me started. He was the one. I was working with him on
Awesome.
Watchers Talk, but I was not. I was actually just helping get talent for him. And
Hmm.
he said one day, he said, I found Neil Gore, who owns Portal to Ascension, and his wife, and I wanted to interview them or have him interview them. And Omar said, why don't you do it? I'm going to have you, I want you to do it, and I'll be co hosting. So if you get nervous, I'll take over. And I sat
Hmm.
down and I started talking. I haven't shut up since. Right. So he's the one that inspired me to talk. And before that, I was giving interviews, and I was inspired by I can't think of his name right now. The guy from Paranormal Into the Night. He interviewed me about my books, and he
Hmm.
inspired me then to continue interviewing. And then Omar inspired me to be on the other end of the microphone and start interviewing. So now here we are, some 8 years later. And I went with him for 2 or 3 years on his show, and then I started my show. He had to take a hiatus, so there was no talk show, and I got antsy. He was gone for like 3 months, so I started my own show, and he came back and went, "Go, brother, do what you're doing." So I wanted to give him a shout out
You're
because
awesome. You're natural at it. You're awesome.
he said the same thing. And so the reason I continued doing this was Neil Gore and his wife thought I was a professional that Omar hired. They didn't know that it was my very first time interviewing anyone.
Wow.
And they were just like, wow, this guy is great. Who's this guy? So they told me
Hmm.
that. And I was like, dude, you're my very first interview. And they're like, no way. You need to be doing this. You got the voice, you got the
Hmm.
charisma, you ask
You
the right
do.
questions. So here I am. So I wanted to give
Kudos.
kudos to Omar. Dino, thank you. Omar remembered. I couldn't remember. Dino from Paranormal Into the Night. Dino, how do you say his last name? I always say it wrong. Dino Pruitt or Hewitt. He's the owner of Paranormal Into the Night, a very successful podcast that is even bigger than mine, or it was. And he went off the air for a few years. So yeah, so I had to give him the shout out because I mean the truth is, if Omar hadn't kicked me out of the nest and said, "No, you interview," had he not done
Hmm.
that, I probably would just be a speaker and not doing anything else.
Hmm. Well, awesome.
So now I do both, right? Now I speak too much and I talk too much and I have my talk show. But you know what? I'm helping people, and so I
You
just
are.
want to give him a good shout out because I didn't see him for some reason in the chat from YouTube because he said he was saying hi in there, but he switched to come over, and I didn't see it in the crowd. I just kind of went back to him like, where the hell is it?
Mhm.
So I don't know what happened. So wires got crossed. Maybe I was off air for a second and it didn't come through. I don't know, brother, but I saw you on Facebook. Okay, so yeah, continue. Let me see if I can come up with another scenario where we can go down another angle here um, for that. For instance, my father was teaching, and I teach people this, and the doctors, of course, try to tell you it's completely hooey, but it's not true. When people get a ringing in their ears, have you had experience with that, where you had a ringing in one of your
Mhm.
ears or both your ears, but it's not
Mhm.
that ringing like I have because I have damage to my eardrums and I hear that tone all the
Yes.
time in both my ears. It's
Yes.
not that ringing, but it's a different one that happens in a different way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right. I do.
So my father was teaching me that as a kid, and it's a form of intuition and communication that you always say, well, your ears must have been burning. That's what they're meaning when they're saying that right there, because it's not that your ears are burning, but sometimes people have that sensation where the ears also get warm, right? And when there's a
Absolutely.
tone and your ear actually gets warm. So my father,
Yes.
when I was a kid, would teach me this. He said, pay attention to those moments if and when they happen, and if and when
Mhm.
they do happen, think about people, all the people that you
Mhm.
know, family members first, usually. The closer the people are to you, the more they're going to be tuned into you, and then go out from there. When you say a person's name and the ringing stops, that person was thinking about you or talking about you.
Usually, sometimes they'll call you immediately or whatever,
And that's what he
something
said.
happens like that.
Sometimes they're going to call you,
Mhm.
right?
They do. They
Or
do.
somehow you're going to have contact, and they could drive up. They could call you on the phone. He says that's how I know when the phone's going to ring and who it is,
Yes.
because the,
Yes.
the the type
Absolutely.
of tone I'm getting, I know that it's a
Mhm.
phone call that's going to happen, not a driving up, right? But it's a
Mhm.
phone call, and he would know all kinds of stuff. He sat up in his bed in the middle of the night. He woke up. I remember we were in the other room. Of course, we all had our own. Well, my brother and I were sharing a room, but everybody had their own rooms except for us. We were the youngest, so we were sharing a room. At the time, we were like 7, 8, and he wakes up and he's sitting in the bed and he lights a cigarette and he starts crying. My father never did that. I mean, he smoked in bed, but he never cried, hardly ever. My mom woke up and said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "The phone is going to ring in a couple of minutes. My older brother just died."
I have done this. I can't even tell you. It's almost an emotional thing how many times I have done that in my life. Yes.
And there was a time when I was up, I went with my buddy Scott, lifelong friend. I've known him for 35, 38 years. We went up to their cabin. His family had a cabin up in Arnold, which is way up in the mountains here in California. And
Mhm.
we would go up there every year to cut back all the brush to make a fire break, so that we would, if the forest caught on fire, we could control at least the stuff on the ground, right, and
Mhm.
don't give it any fuel to continue burning. We went up there to do that, and we came in at night, and we were unaware that there was I was unaware. He knew it, but I was unaware that there was already a fire over in the next valley over. And they
Mhm.
said that the wind might be blowing it towards us, and so he was like, we need to go cut back the brush up there just in case. So it
Yes.
turned out that the fire came right there. And we went up there and we started cutting everything back, and we then continued and cut a very large area, and we took all of the brush and we put it in the gutter. You know how the old fashioned gutters are. It was just a big gutter that was
Mhm.
like 5 feet wide. It looked like a river when the water was flowing. That's what the natural gutters are. So they made those, and we put them all in there so that we could scoop it out later if we had to and get it out of there. And eventually the fire was coming closer and closer. We could see it, and then ash started raining down on us. And so we were staying as long as we could. They evacuated the area, and we still stayed. They came down and they had took down our names and told us, you need to listen to this radio station. When the fire is going to get here, if you're going to get trapped, we have to come and get you. You will be mandatory evacuated. We said okay, so we stayed there, and they turned off the water. We had no running water by this time. Everything was shut down. Everyone was gone. We were the only ones that stayed, so far as I know, in that area, and we continued. And when the news got down to the Bay Area where my family was, they all knew we were up there, and they were like, "Oh my God, that fire is where they are, and we have no contact with them." So my brother, he's the youngest of all of us. I lived with he and I still lived with my mom and my stepdad at the time. I was like 21 and he was 19. And he says, no, he says, our father was a firefighter. My brother is up there fighting that fire. He is not dead. I would know if he was
Mhm.
dead. And everybody was like, you don't know that. He's like, I know that. Trust me. So then my mom called my sisters. They're like, he's fine. He's fighting the fire. That's what dad would do. He's not dead. We would know it. So
Mhm.
we were gone for 3 days off the grid. No one knew where we were. We were fighting this fire. And
Mhm.
finally they came down and said, you have to go now. The fire is about to jump the highway,
Mhm.
and you're going to be the last civilians that we're going to let out. We're closing down a 50-mile strip of Highway 4 all the way up to Arnold and all the way back down to, I forgot the name of the city, little town down the way, and I can't, Angels Camp. He says, so you have to go now. So when we left, the truth is we were driving and it was a firestorm. It was blocking out the sun. The flames were shooting up so high, it looked like a volcano had erupted. And it was all dark, and you could see fire like 150 feet in the air. And I took pictures of it, and we literally drove for like 5 miles, and they had a 5 mile long stretch, bumper to bumper fire trucks, and they
Wow.
actually sat on that freeway, and it jumped over them, and they controlled it as much as they could, and the fire actually burned all the way up to his cabin. And the reason I'm telling the story is, when from all the work we did, when they saw what we did, they brought all the forestry came down there and used what we did as the last fire break to stop the
Wow.
fire. And we didn't know it. When we left and we came back down, we were still with dirt and grass hanging off our shoes and in our socks and all over us, filthy dirty. We hadn't showered in 3 days. And we go driving, and we stopped at Angels Camp, and then came all the way back down to the Bay Area. And we walk into his house, and his dad says, God damn it. He says, we thought you were dead. And he points to me and he says, and you need to call your mom. So I called my mother, told her what was going on. We were okay, took a shower. And then we ended up going out to get pizza. My girlfriend came from my house. She was camping at my house, waiting to find out if I was alive. She hot-footed it over to his house, and then we went out to get pizza. And then he and I were like, we got to go back up there because we know all the people that are fighting the fire, and we need to know what happened to the cabin. And she's like, I'm coming with you. We had pizza. We grabbed the pizza off the pizza parlor, drove up there. But the whole family kept telling his family, they're okay. We would know if he was dead. My entire family was like, no, he's not dead. We're not in denial. I can feel it. He's alive, and he's fighting the fire. And that's what we were doing.
Right.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
right.
I know that was a
I
long
think
story, but
a lot of times biological, there's biological connection. Sometimes there's always a little bit of gifts in there that people have already recognized that they were dealing with. But I find that the biological connection, a lot of times, just the connection that you have, a lot of times it's because you've lived other lives with those same people, but you have a very deep connection to know if they're alive or if they're not. And just that's kind of like in the search for my brother. Um, I had a psychic friend helping me too, and she would ask me questions, and that's what I do a lot now too, ask people questions to ask themselves. And so she
right.
did that a lot. And once there was this church that I kept having feelings about. I would go behind there, and I said, I keep having feelings like right here. I feel so intense, like he had been right here, and I feel it so strong. And so she said, okay, call me whenever you go that way again. So I did. And she said, okay, Robbie, there's going to be a blackbird. It's going to speak to you. And about that time, this great big old blackbird, I don't think it was a crow, uh, maybe just a raven, and it started, squawking. And she says, now what is he saying to you? And I was like, he's saying he's here. He's here. He's here. But I got so upset. I said, but he's not fucking here. I was mad. You know,
He's not fucking
but
here.
guess what?
Go ahead.
He was 200 yards from there.
Wow.
I finally had to go around another route in the land to find. And there was this man, this old man, and he was like really gifted, and he used a dowsing rod a lot, and he let me use it a lot. And he said, I know where you need to go, and you're going to find him when you go there. I said, okay, but my brother already came to me in his spirit and said, I can't see him
Right.
because his name's Robert and I'm Robbie. So that lady said, she told me, she said, you're like twins, soul twins. I said, duh, my mom didn't name us Robbie and Robert for nothing. It means the same thing.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
that's where I am. But anyway, so all the different visions, I can tell you, it was a long, a lot of different experiences psychically and visions and whatnot. But even I dreamt it 20 years to the day before it happened, nearly everything just like it happened, vividly. And that did help me in the search quite a bit. But anyway, so I got around there, and so I knew that I was going to have to put my kids into finding him, which was very difficult for me. But that's what was going to happen because I couldn't physically see him, and I promised I wouldn't.
Right.
I told him. So there was something across this little waterway. So I asked these folks that own this land, can my kids and my best friend's son use this? They think it's something over there. I know we're searching for my brother. Thank you for letting us come on your property to take this route. And I thank you so much. We're very grateful for that. But they say something over there, and I know it's not nothing, but they want to go over there and see it to see if it's something. And they're like, okay. So they got in the boat and they went over there. It was nothing. I knew it was nothing. And they said, okay, which way? And all of a sudden, I just got so weak in my knees. And I said, to the right, and it wasn't even 5 minutes they found him after we'd already been searching 10 days. But I just went down to my knees. But then I got up and started walking really fast. And my daughter, she felt it too. When she pulled in there, she didn't want to pull in that driveway. She said, I ain't going down this driveway. I said, okay, Cheyenne. And she's like, no, I ain't going down there. She felt it. She knew what was about to happen, that she was going to find him. And I'm like, okay, Cheyenne. So I just got out of the truck and started walking. She's like, Mom, I'm sorry. I said, no, it's okay. I understand.
Right. Yeah.
I do understand. And I was so grateful that we were able to put him to rest. And you have to be that way, because I was already talking to him in the spirit realm. He was telling me I could not see him,
Right.
And so, so I had to keep that. And it wasn't easy for me to keep that, but I did, you know. But the feelings, you get those feelings,
Yeah. Well, and and a lot of that, like Aaron had made the comment a lot earlier when we were talking and kind of hitting on this, and you can't unsee the stuff that you see.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and that's why I tell people, when you get to that place where you're about to jump off, that precipice of understanding. That's when they tell you that, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. That's what they're talking about. Right?
Well, I know.
That's what they're
Mhm.
talking about, because once you start to expand your mind, that like, to quote Yoda, forever will it dominate your destiny. But he at that point was using that as the analogy for the dark side, right? Once you start
Mhm.
going down the dark path, forever it will dominate your destiny. But on both sides of the coin, it's the same, right? Once you
Mhm.
start trying to wake yourself up, then there's no going back. It's not like the Matrix. Well, I guess there is if you do it early on, but once you pass a certain level of understanding, you can't go back, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you can't go back.
That's right.
You can't unlearn it.
That's right.
You can't undo what you know. In the beginning, it's like what they said in the movie Willow. You have to unlearn everything that you've learned. Once you do that, you can progress forward. But once you start, going forward, it becomes harder. And then once you make that decision to start waking yourself up and looking in and going down those rabbit holes, then it becomes harder, and you can't go back.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. We do have to retrain our brain. We have to retrain our way of thinking, because society and everything has taught us the ways that we're supposed to be. Well, screw that. Screw that.
Right.
And you can manifest good. We all have manifest bad all the time. We have some kind of symptom. We look it up on the internet. Next thing you know, it's in our head. We have this. That's just a small, for instance, but people do it all the time.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
get worried about it and they manifest it into their life.
Yeah, see, that's what Omar's saying. He says, "Don't wish, make an informed intention," and
Exactly.
then positive, right? Because
Yes.
if you, and that was, we kind of ran into this on Skull Island on Wednesday when one of the guests was on there, and she had said, talking about, she had met people that were stuck and would never become unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, we have to be careful when we make comments like that, because by doing so, you're that's a reflection of you. You're judging them, which means it's judging yourself, and
Yes.
that hurt her ego, and she got kind of upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
And continued going back to that. me saying that to her 3 more times during the broadcast. And all the co-hosts and the other guests that was on were trying to help her to understand as well without being adversarial, but she was putting me in that adversarial role because I said that. And I said, I didn't say that with malice intention. I say that to everyone. I just said it to my sister who said something negative about herself. And I said, you have to stop with that. That's what they were telling you in the books
Yes.
and the whole secret of the,
Absolutely.
was the secret to get all the negative out of your mind. You don't say to yourself, my second ex-wife, her father used to call him goddamn it Jim, because he started every conversation with God damn it, and then said the name of the person he was talking to. Right? That's literally, I heard that out of his mouth, and then you just listen for the word. Is he talking to his son, his daughter, or his wife? Right? And so her name's Melissa, and he would say, God damn it, Melissa, and then he would yell whatever it was he was going to yell at her. He wasn't a horrible man, but he had his, he had a rough upbringing, and he was very gruff.
Yeah.
But as he got older in life, like everyone else, he mellowed out and he loved her to death, and they had a beautiful relationship. And he just passed, and she's heartbroken. But then she got into